Fiasco with Rico. The marquee burns hot over a rain-slick street. Fiasco with Rico. One night only or so the posters say. Inside, a pit band tunes to a nervous usher's circle with programs and hope. The crowd is primed for spectacle. It may get a lesson instead, because this show is not merely about failure. It is about the kind of failure that performs itself, flamboyant flame-out with ricochets, where the first mistake is not the last event, but the opening note in a symphony of unintended consequences. Enter our lead, Rico. Dancer, stuntman, physics in a tux. What he touches does not stop where it lands. It glances, it flies, it returns. A fiasco differs from the everyday busted tire. It is not only the wheel, it is the stagecoach off the ridge, the lantern skittering into the hayloft, the mayor's speech catching fire while the brass band keeps playing because somebody forgot the signal for halt. The dictionary offers complete and ignominious failure, but that misses the choreography, the ricochet. In a fiasco, errors are coupled, stakes are performative, and the aftermath travels. The original Italian gives a sly clue, fiasco, a bottle. In the old theaters, to make a bottle was to bomb so visibly the crowd could not pretend otherwise. A cracked vessel cannot carry water. A cracked performance cannot carry meaning. The bottle breaks and shards go flying. Ricochet's cue. Act I is titled The Bottle. It opens in a glassworks. An apprentice gathers molten sand on a blowpipe, turns it, breathes it, shapes it. A wobble in the wrist becomes a wobble in the wall. The flaw grows with each rotation. At the cooling table, the bottle looks sound, but the stress is baked in. The master taps the neck with a file. A spider web races the body. It is a lesson about hidden strain. Theater borrowed the metaphor because audiences can hear strain before they can see it. So can systems. So can friendships. The first crack is rarely loud. It is small heat in the wrong place. This is where the choreography turns technical. Every fiasco shares certain steps. Overconfidence sets the music. Coupled systems stack the stage. Stage-managed urgency turns the metronome up. Exit ramps are removed in the name of decisiveness. Dashboards are painted to flatter optics. Face-saving lies become the quick-change booth where reality is swapped for costume. One more yank on the rope, one more spotlight, one more finale added at the 11th hour because momentum. Ricochet thrives in these conditions. A bad angle sends him across 5 scenes. Kerfuffle makes a cameo as comic relief. An ensemble in feathered fans and fluster dances a number called brouhaha. It is all noise, hands, hats, oofs. Fun to watch, rarely lethal. Fiasco watches from the wings like a principal who knows the difference between ruckus and rupture. The audience learns the distinction by feeling it in the sternum. Kerfuffle interrupts a show. Fiasco ends it. When the feather storm clears, a spotlight finds Ricochet at the edge of the stage, toes over the pit, grinning like a billiard ball that knows geometry is fate. Rico's signature move is the bank shot. Consequences do not travel in straight lines, they rebound. The set designer underorders screws to save time. The flats quiver. The baritone leans a hair too hard on a stair. The tread pops. The paramedic later notes the latter had been fine for years, which is to say uninspected. The ricochet is not a moral, it is a map of energy. Shifts in force seek new paths. In organizations, the energy is attention and blame. Both are conserved, unless deliberately dissipated. Without slack, force piles. With slack, force settles. Intermission arrives early and awkward when Act I collapses into the orchestra. House lights up. A murmur runs through velvet seats. The conductor checks the strings for blood and tone. The crowd does what crowds do, turns the event into story while it is still unfolding. Spectacle teaches quick lessons. Truth prefers thickness. In the aisles, program and hope swap notes. Meanwhile, backstage, A stage manager who has rehearsed Quiet Crisis for a decade begins Act 2 with 3 words: stop, breathe, listen. Act 2 is called The Antidote You Pay For in Advance. It is less showy than Act 1 and therefore better theater, because the audience leaves with muscle memory instead of gossip. The band plays in 4 quarters. The steps are plain. 1. Pre-mortem. Before curtain, imagine how tonight fails. Name the hinge points. This costs an hour, it saves a week. 2. Slack. Build margin around critical paths. Not waste. Insurance. 15 minutes of slack prevents an evening of apology. 3. Reversibility. Take short, reversible steps early instead of long, grand ones that trap the cast in optics. 4. Honest dashboards. Make it easy to see drift while it is small enough to correct without drama. 5. Load tests. Check fittings at the pressures they will bear, not at the pressures that flatter. Fiasco hates these 5. Ricochet hates them more. They absorb his energy. Tempo gets its own number because it always does. 2 clocks share the pit: Chronos, the count, and Kairos, the ripeness. The show pays the bills with Chronos. It stays alive by serving Kairos. The best art department knows when paint must dry. The best surgeon knows when suture can wait. The best friend knows when silence mends better than speech. The phrase that came in earlier, attention held at the speed of truth, lands as a motif. Not faster, not slower. Faster shears detail, slower invites rot. The meter for correctness is not applause, it is endurance under contact. A critic appears, not the snide kind, the useful kind, and speaks into a lamp. Outcomes are teachers when they are not litigations. Post-mortems conducted as theater produce kerfuffle, big words, small fixes. Post-mortems conducted as care produce carpentry, better joints, less rumor. The critic suggests a 2-needle gauge for future nights, harm reduced and fidelity raised. If the next performance leaves fewer injuries and more honest singing, the pace and the plan were true. If not, change the tempo, not the marketing copy. Ricochet returns in a quiet coat for a number titled Ballistics. The dance is slow, almost tender. He traces the angles a small decision takes as it moves through a coupled system. 1 degree here becomes a foot there. A brag here becomes 3 falsified metrics there. A well-meant omission becomes a blind spot that grows teeth. The audience begins to see cause and effect as choreography rather than fate. That is the gift of Act 2. Consequences regain contour. Contour breeds care. A hospital scene follows, not tragedy, mending. Tissue has its own clocks. Bone knits on protein, blood supply, and time. Nerve regrowth favors fidelity over speed, because a fast signal in the wrong path is noise, and noise injures. This is not sentimental pastoral, it is kinetics. Systems heal on similar terms. The understudies here are mercy and repair. Mercy keeps harm from multiplying through retaliation. Repair keeps harm from lingering through denial. Together they slow Ricochet. The set now shows 2 clocks mounted above the proscenium. One spins, the other breathes. The fast layers of culture, feeds, trends, quarterly numbers, can sprint without tearing the slow layers only if the seam is protected. Infrastructure crawls, law lumbers, trust ambles. The watershed moves on a geologic beat. Fiasco begins when fast conscripts slow, or when slow pretends to sprint. The stage manager's job is seam protocol. Let experiments live where reversals are cheap. Let commitments settle where depth is required. No pyrotechnics needed, just honest timing. A small comic burst returns, bureaucracy versus panic. The joke lands because each is a caricature of time's misuse. Panic demands the drumline play every bar as finale. Bureaucracy demands no bar be played without a new form. The antidote is an ethic of triage with compassion. Some fires are real. Run, many are orange gels. Breathe. When a company, a family, or a city learns to see the difference, Ricochet loses work. Then comes the microphone drop that is not a mic drop. A simple triad, 3 questions sung over a brushed snare. What is needed? What is mine? What is the humane pace? When all 3 align, action becomes quiet and exact. When one is missing, friction whistles, the task fights back, the body rebels, the tone curdles. The triad is not a hack, it is a way to keep choreography from turning into shrapnel. The finale is small on purpose. A bottle is brought out, whole and clear. The master taps the neck, but nothing spiders. The apprentice lifts it to the light. Tiny swirls in the glass testify to earlier heat. Strength is not the absence of strain, it is strain that has been cooled in honesty. The chorus steps forward with a short insert. Call it the playbill note for people who like to leave with something in the pocket. 1. Count fittings, not outputs. 2. Build slack where fit matters. 3. Prefer reversible steps early, commitments late. 4. Tune the day to Kairos, let Chronos pay the bills. 5. Measure by harm reduced and fidelity raised. 6. Keep wonder in the budget, it slows the blade. 7. Retire counterfeit urgency, it is kerfuffle in heroic clothing. 8. Practice the triad, needed, mine, humane pace. Ricochet returns for one last bow, oddly shy. Not because his spotlight fades, but because the theater has learned to absorb his angles. Ricochet is physics, it never leaves, yet it can be turned from shrapnel into instrument. Cushioned in slack, caught by honest dashboards, redirected by rehearsal that anticipates where force will travel when something fails. A fiasco can still happen, but it loses the flamboyance that makes it a spectacle, and the ricochets that make it a legend. The bottle can break quietly, and the room can go on singing. The house goes dark. Rain outside slows to a polite patter. The band walks the pit stairs with cases that click like metronomes. The night did not become a headline, it became a practice. That is a better legacy for a show called Fiasco with Ricochet, to teach how to leave a room stronger than it was entered, to grant an audience the ability to sense the speed of truth before the lights get hot, and to step around the parts of human life that love noise more than endurance. No curtain speech is needed, only a vow. Move at the speed where the work remains itself after contact, no faster, no slower. When pressure comes, ask the triad. When spectacle calls, check the seam. When kerfuffle rattles its feathers, let it dance without handing it the script. And when Ricochet leaps, because he always will, let the angle meet cushions built in advance so the energy returns to music instead of to rumor. A fiasco ends the show. A lesson lets it run. Outside, someone crosses the street under the marquee and smiles at the title. It reads like a comedy. It is one. But it is also a manual disguised as a song and dance, and manuals that sing are easier to remember. Tomorrow's work begins in a dozen quiet shops where fittings will be counted, slack will be left, tempos will be tuned, and bottles will cool without spidering. The show did not prevent failure, it changed the physics of what happens next. That is enough. That is theater worth the ticket.